It's time for QB1 with Crissy, Froyd, and Crissy. You're talking about Sam Darnold today on QB1, who has just been affected by a new trade, bringing Baker Mayfield into the fold with the Carolina Panthers. How do you think that ultimately affects Sam Darnold's mindset from what you know about him?
Well, I mean, all the reports that have come out about this, it's all very complimentary things, all positive comments. And there's the talk of Darnold saying he'll help Mayfield move in and all of that, and how they've said that they can help each other and feel like they can help each other grow. And that's all fine and well. And it's good just to see that things are off to a good start, especially with all the rumors surrounding Mayfield and his personality. And I think that there's some merit to those, I guess, the era of good feelings that they've kind of entered with each other. But at the same time, these are two players who are competing. And between the acquisition of Corral and Mayfield in such a short period of time, Sam Darnold has to be feeling the heat. And you can tell that Carolina doesn't have faith in him after the season that he had last year. And so I think that he knows he's kind of under the gun and is definitely feeling the pressure.
As you assess his performance last season, what do you think ultimately went wrong last year for Sam Darnold?
Well, I think he's consistently had a lot of decision-making issues, and you kind of just wonder, I think about sometime to a degree if it's possible that he got ruined in New York. I always think back to the "I'm seeing ghosts" comment that he made when he was mic'd up, the big deal that apparently wasn't supposed to be heard. But I think that really sums up just how baffling some of the decisions he makes are, that just kind of make you turn your head. And then accuracy's been an issue. This is a quarterback that's only touched a 60% completion rate once in his career, barely surpassing it. I think it was about 62%, and has recorded double-digit turnovers every single year. And these are trends that have now occurred with two teams, even if we do want to give him a little bit of leeway with the fact that it was his first year in Carolina last year.
If a professional quarterback, Crissy, is having a confidence crisis or can't seem to mentally get out of their own way when grasping sort of the schematic fundamentals that go with an organization, who does a quarterback typically look for to help solve those problems? And are those problems that you think are solvable in Sam Darnold's case at this point?
I think that's something that remains to be seen, but I think that also comes down to relationship with the coaching staff, chemistry with teammates on the field, being able to get to the receiver, those kind of things. But this just seems to be a consistent issue for Sam Darnold. And I've seen multiple quarterbacks that are just overthinkers, both on and off the field, and it ends up ultimately ruining their career in the long term. And so if he can come out of that, which we've seen some quarterbacks go through some things like this, and then they hit their stride and everything's fine again. But this is a quarterback that has consistently just not come close to meeting the expectations, really, for the better part that he's been in the league.
Are Baker Mayfield or Sam Darnold, either of them, are they good enough to make a real difference next season with improving the Panthers' record and making them a better team?
Yeah, I think it's going to just come down to if either of them can hit their stride. And I think that when we look at that and be reasonable about it, it seems much more likely that Baker Mayfield has a higher upside and the higher ceiling. And I think that there's, if you will, more excuses that can be made for him just because of the way that things were in Cleveland. It was clearly not a good situation. There were multiple factors we can point to that are substantiated that we can say, hey, well, maybe this is why this happened to this quarterback. And Baker Mayfield opened the season, the first two games last year, one of the best completion rates in the league, and then had one of the worst not long after. It seems like ever since he sustained that injury, he was just never the same again. And so we've seen who this player can be. And so there's definitely this idea that if we take away all the bad from last year, maybe it wouldn't have gone down that badly. And I think that that's honestly something for Carolina to be excited about.
Yeah, you mentioned the pleasantries that have been exchanged publicly between these two. Is there a world where Sam Darnold has already accepted that his new role is probably going to be served as a backup to Baker Mayfield here in Carolina, despite the fact that this is so far being billed as a training camp quarterback competition?
Yeah, I think that thought has to have entered his mind. I don't think he would say it publicly, and I certainly don't think anyone out of the organization is going to come forward and say, hey, Sam Darnold might be our backup quarterback this year. But I think that it's certainly plausible. And then really you have to wonder too, is Sam Darnold going to eventually hit the trade market or just eventually at some point be released? Because I just don't see him staying in Carolina at the long term, just in the long term, unless he manages to really hit something and have some sort of resurgence, which we've kind of been expecting for a while. That's never come to fruition.
Are there teams that you have in mind? I mean, how long do you think it will be before he might start to look elsewhere or they might start to look elsewhere?
I think this is something that might take a little bit longer, especially while there is a legitimate competition. So I think there's a very good chance that he could stay here this year, and then maybe next year is where it becomes more of a question. And plus, as you mentioned, another segment, the trade market is there's not a ton of landing spots anymore. There are certainly some places that he could go, and I'm sure some people that would still want him. But I kind of feel like time is just beginning to run out for Sam Darnold. So if he doesn't really hit something soon, this is a quarterback that might have one or two more spots before he's eventually out of the league or just reserved to a backup.
Yeah. QB1 with Crissy Froyd. Great stuff, Crissy, as always. Thanks.